The pain. The pain. My arms, my legs, each lies a bloody ruin. Bayle, vile Bayle! Oh, terror incarnate! There is life in me yet! I will soon feast upon your heart! Mark my words! You too shall know fear!
Dragon Heart, seized by a dragon tracker. Riddled with gravelstone, this grotesque organ continues to beat vivaciously, an offering used in the Dragon Communion. Consume a dragon's heart at the altar to make its power yours. While a terrible and savage-looking thing, the heart has a peculiar beauty to it. Was Bayle the Dread truly defeated? Are magma worms the result of modern dragon hearts rebelling against those who partake in the act of Dragon Communion? A commenter on my recent Dragon Communion video suggested that modern partakers might transform into magma worms due to consuming rebellious dragon hearts. This intriguing idea aligns with the description of Bayle's heart, which implied that one who consumes it is eventually going to be consumed by the heart itself, though what this would result in is unclear. I personally speculate that the heart of Bayle will eventually lead to transforming into a magma worm, or perhaps becoming Bayle the Dread himself. The biatrial heart of Bayle the Dread, dotted with horn-like gravelstones and glistening with deep red liquor. Gorge upon this at the grand altar of Dragon Communion to absorb Bayle's power, the purest form of communion, in the words of its priestess. Before I delve any deeper, I broke my arm and am still recovering from a recent major surgery as a result of the injury. I'm currently out of work, so please go ahead and like the video and subscribe if you aren't already. It would mean a lot as it really helps the video and me greatly. I appreciate your viewership, and on to the rest of the video. On the way to Bayle on the jagged peak in the Shadow Realm, the sight of the burned corpses of Dragon Communion and Drake warriors is striking, their bodies charred and sprouting dragon's calor bloom. Item descriptions related to Dragon Communion and Dragon Heart consumption reveal that the heat of dragons is intoxicating, leading to addiction, madness, and rage. This is evident in Egon, who conveys a wild fervor.
Bayle the Dread! You shall haunt me no longer!
Egon's intense rage and vigor in fighting dragons and consuming their hearts, especially after battling Bayle once before, underscore this. Beyond this, the dragon priestess Florisax tells the Tarnished that the act of Dragon Communion was intended to bolster the rage and bloodlust that ancient beings such as dragons do not often possess.
Driven by bottomless hunger and fiery ambition, precisely what the Dragon Lord envisaged for men who partake in Dragon Communion. The mad hunger and fierceness of spirit that only flows from those young and short of sight. He rather reminds me of Bayle. In fact, such thoughts are unfathomable to ones as old as we.
The bodies of fallen Drake and Dragon Communion warriors on the jagged peak are often sprouting dragon's calor blooms. If you want to learn more about dragon's calor blooms, then go ahead and check out my previous video. Though, the presence of these dragon's calor blooms suggests that those who consume dragon hearts might be consumed in turn by those very hearts, possibly evolving into magma worms, or dying as the calor blooms burst from their chests, reminiscent of the chest bursters from the Alien movies. The red flowers blanketing Bayle's arena and the jagged peak hinted a massive number of Dragon Communion and Drake warriors perishing there. It's not entirely clear what differentiates those who become magma worms versus those who die from the dragon's calor bloom. However, as I'll expand on in a moment, it seems most likely that those who are killed in battle will sprout a dragon's calor bloom, whereas those who continue to consume dragon hearts without perishing become magma worms. The dragon priestess Florisax continues to call Bayle the Dread the oldest and vilest of all dragons, perhaps suggesting he is older than even Placidusax. We know he is the oldest of all drakes and modern dragons, though this is not a distinction the dragon priestess makes, simply referring to Bayle as the oldest and vilest of all dragons, though perhaps the distinction is that she may refer to modern dragons as just dragons, and ancient dragons specifically as ancient dragons, and this could possibly explain the wording, though I'm not certain. As I mentioned earlier, perhaps Bayle never dies naturally, and if slain, his heart could consume the Drake warrior, or transform into a dragon on its own, if not consumed. Such twists would not be out of character for FromSoft. After all, this may be why partakers of Dragon Communion become magma worms. After all, they are still beating vivaciously upon consumption. Of course, this is just my personal speculation, though we have seen there to be many ways in which humanoids can acquire a draconic form such as the magma worms, ancient dragon forms, or even the dragonkin soldiers in the Eternal Cities. It's not out of the realm of possibility that the heart of Bayle is powerful and rebellious enough that the one who consumes it will ultimately be consumed by the heart of Bayle, or quite literally become an ancient dragon, literally becoming Bayle the Dread reborn. Magma worms appear everywhere in the lands between and even in the Land of Shadow, implying that people in the Shadow Realm, too, can become magma worms. There's still a mystery as to why some heart consumers become magma worms, while others die. Notably, there are no corpses with flowers in Bayle's arena, suggesting a different fate for those who died there compared to those on the Jagged Peak. It may simply be a design choice, and perhaps the dragon's calor blooms do in fact only bloom from those who are killed, whereas others become magma worms. Though, if it's not simply a design choice, then perhaps there is more complexity to Dragon Communion. It might depend on the type of heart consumed. Modern dragon hearts, descendants of Bayle the Dread, could cause people to become magma worms. Bayle's rebellious heart hints that consuming hearts from modern dragons, his descendants, leads to this transformation. Magma worms resemble Bayle not only in their design but also in their use of magma, reinforcing a connection between Bayle and magma worms. The language surrounding magma worms implies that the sin of Dragon Communion transformed them into what they are, which falls in line with the idea that the consumption of dragon hearts for many leads to either death, or a transformation into a lesser dragon like Makar or Theodorix. It's said these land-bound dragons were once human heroes who partook in Dragon Communion, a grave transgression for which they were cursed to crawl the earth upon their bellies, shadows of their former selves. As the act of Dragon Communion was started by Placidusax, it implies that the adherents of the Erd Tree and the Golden Order were likely not on board with the concept of Dragon Communion, considering it to be a sinful transgression against the new age in the lands between. Of course, this is likely due to the Erd Tree usurping all previous religions and ideologies, as Dragon Communion is effectively a religion formed by Placidusax at the end of his reign. Thus, the act of Dragon Communion is a remnant of the past that Marika wanted to snuff out. This description supports the notion that those who were never struck down become magma worms, as they are remembered as great heroes, and several of their names are still known, like the aforementioned Makar and Theodorix. The name of the ancient troll warrior, Theodorix, lives on, as a hero of the war against the giants. These were warriors that continued to best dragons, only to succumb to the heat of their hearts. On the other hand, those that went straight for Bayle never stood a chance of becoming magma worms, their corpses lining the jagged peak. And while those who were not slain did not sprout Caller blooms, the rebellious hearts of the descendants of Bayle were still too much for them to handle, and it will likely be too much for the Tarnished to hold back for long. If many other great historical warriors become magma worms, then perhaps the one who consumes the heart of Bayle will become the supreme magma worm, as none have yet been able to resist the rebellious nature of the dragon hearts. The heart of Bayle is the most powerful, most rebellious dragon heart of them all, and is the purest form of communion. It was the final edict of Placidusax that Bayle's heart and the hearts of his descendants be consumed, yet as evidenced by the magma worms and the addictive nature of dragon communion, Bayle the Dread may be the victor in the Civil War of Dragons after all. Thank you so much for watching. I had a lot of fun with this one. In my next video, I'm planning to explore the Newman and their connection to the Hornsent and the Land of Shadow, but until then, have a lovely day.